Now, I started wondering, how do we measure this? Because it just doesn't look like that much space. I was like, how could he have possibly been suspended in this small amount of space? And he wasn't in some sort of weird bobsled position or some sort of angle. He is described as being vertically straight up and down. All of that aside, I wanted to figure out how we can figure out the distance to this piece of fabric right here, because it just doesn't seem that long. And I realized we've got cinder blocks right here, and cinder blocks are a standard size, including grout, they're 8 inches. So we know exactly how high this is. If you recall, I pointed out that little gray band at the bottom that's approximately 2 inches. Well, now we're going to go through and calculate exactly how high up this piece of fabric is right here. And I mentioned earlier, this potential noose, they still don't know whether or not this was it, but this would add another inch or two to all of that we just saw. So I just want you to keep in mind, they think this was probably it, but no one knows for sure. They still aren't sure what was or wasn't used as the ligature. This is their best guess, even though this right here is what is always shown. You always see pictures of this, but we know for a fact it was not this. This was unequivocally not what was used, but it was what was given to the medical examiner. We're going to get to that later. So you remember that little 2-inch band I showed you earlier on, that little gray band at the bottom? Well, I accounted for that, and now we're going to look at where this would fall on an average heighted man. So 2 inches at the bottom, and this does not count the mattress. That would probably actually add 3 inches that would negate some of this, but I'm not including that. I'm trying to be as conservative as I can be. So after one brick, we're at 10, then 18, 26, 34, and 42 inches. So we know for sure these are very standard sizes. This is most definitely correct as far as how high up this piece of fabric is. Now, the average man, the part of his neck where the ligature would have been, because we've seen pictures of Epstein, the ligature was way up there. It would have been approximately around 30 inches, give or take. If you pulled this down, it would probably be pulled down all the way to 24 inches. And then you add that noose that we saw earlier, that's another couple of inches on top of any looseness from the noose as well, because this was a knot that was fairly loose. We would be going all the way down to about 18 inches, if not lower. It would have been impossible with this piece of fabric right here and the noose we saw earlier. That could not have suspended somebody with the setup that we've been given. It just couldn't have. And if he was not suspended, then that means the medical examiner's findings are incorrect, because the medical examiner talked about all of the various things in the neck that were crushed. The trachea was pushed to the back of the neck. There are all of these things that are related to pressure that wouldn't happen if it was a simple asphyxiation. So the fact that he was suspended is extremely relevant to everything else. He would have had to have been suspended for the medical examiner's report to make any sense. And if he wasn't suspended, then everything that we know about how he died is wrong. Now, the alternative explanation would be that somebody set him up in a seated position, put a ligature around his neck, and pulled it tight. That's pretty much all you'd be able to do if you, in fact, murdered somebody and tried to stage it.